Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take your sources, cut through the noise, and give you the core insights. Today we're tackling something huge, a symbol that's, well, incredibly loaded. We're talking about the swastika.
Yeah. And for so many people, just hearing the word or seeing the image, it brings up immediate feelings of, dread, hate, the absolute worst of the 20th century.
Exactly. It's got this instant visceral reaction tied to it now. But here's the thing, and this is what we really want to unpack today. What if I told you that for thousands, literally thousands of years before that, this exact same symbol meant something completely different?
Something profoundly positive, actually. Spiritual significance, good fortune, well-being. For billions of people across the globe, it's this stark, almost unbelievable duality that we need to explore.
It really is. So our mission here isn't just to talk about its Nazi association, though we absolutely have to confront that. We need to go deeper. We want to question that singular negative understanding, peel back the layers, find its original meanings.
And trace its journey, because it's everywhere in the ancient world, so many different cultures.
Oh, and then, yes, look unflinchingly at how it was hijacked, twisted, and given this repulsive stigma it carries today. The goal isn't to excuse anything the Nazis did, obviously not, but it's to grasp the full, complex history and maybe, just maybe, challenge this idea that a symbol with millennia of positive meaning can be just stolen. Irrevocably. Can we understand its whole story?
It's a tough question, and to do it, we've really immersed ourselves in a wide range of sources. Ancient scriptures, historical texts.
Archaeological findings too, right? From all over.
Exactly, from different continents, different eras. And modern analyses trying to make sense of this contradiction. These are our guides for digging into the story of the swastika or the Hakenkreuz or whatever name it held in different times and places.
Okay, let's start right at the beginning. The name itself, swastika, it sounds like what it is now, but where does the word actually come from?
It's not German, that's the first key thing. It's Sanskrit, directly from Sanskrit, an ancient language of India. And phonetically, yeah, it's pronounced pretty much like we say it in English.
Sanskrit. Okay, so what does it mean in Sanskrit?
Well, if you break it down, it's quite revealing. Su means good or well, and asbi means it is or to be.
That is good. Or well-being? Something like that.
Precisely. Good existence well-being. That's the core idea. If you look at ancient Vedic texts, the word swasti pops up all the time. It means blessing, good fortune, success, stability, completeness.
Wow. So it was literally a symbol for good things, auspiciousness.
Absolutely. Intrinsically tied to positive concepts, the very embodiment of prosperity.
That's quite a contrast to its modern image. And the age of this symbol. I mean, we're not talking about a few centuries here, are we?
Not even close. This is the part that often shocks people. The oldest known representation, it dates back roughly 15,000 years.
15,000.
Yeah.
15,000
years. Let that sink in for a second. It puts the 20th century association into a very different time frame.
Where was this found?
This specific one was discovered back in 1908 in Ukraine at a site called Mizin, a Paleolithic settlement. It was carved quite clearly onto a piece of mammoth tusk.
Mammoth tusk. Incredible.
And the carving showed a cross shape, but with each arm bent at a 90-degree angle, the classic form.
So it was already recognizably a swastika, even back then in Paleolithic Europe.
It suggests the symbol, or something very like it, was around far earlier than most people imagine. Predating so many civilizations we think of as ancient, it hints at a really deep, perhaps even primordial origin for this shape.
Okay, so it wasn't just a random doodle on a tusk. It became deeply embedded in major ancient cultures, particularly in India.
Oh, absolutely central. You see it clearly in the Indus Valley civilization, flourishing around 3000 BCE. It appears on their seals and other archaeological finds. It wasn't just marginal, it seems to have been quite significant.
And not just as art, right? You mentioned something about town planning.
Yes, Vastu Shastra. Ancient Indian principles of architecture and town planning. It's incredibly sophisticated stuff, aiming for harmony with cosmic forces. And the swastika wasn't just a symbol in buildings, it was a geometric concept used in the layout. Like Paramashika and Sarvatopadra, these were principles for designing spaces to bring, well, good things.
Success, stability. The very meaning of the word.
Exactly. It shows a deep connection between their mathematical knowledge, their spiritual beliefs, and even urban design, often linked to Vedic rituals and maintaining cosmic order. It wasn't just decoration, it was applied philosophy.
And it even shows up in their big stories, their epics.
It does. In the Ramayana, one of the foundational texts, it's mentioned as being embossed on the boat that carries Lord Rama.
As a good luck charm, maybe, or protection.
Probably something like that. An auspicious mark. And in the Mahabharata, another huge epic, the term is used to describe a complex battle formation, the Chakravyuha.
A battle formation, that seems different.
Well, maybe invoking victory or protection for the soldiers, even in war. It just shows how integrated it was. Daily life, religion, mythology, even military strategy. It was woven into the fabric of their culture.
That's really thorough integration in India. But you said it wasn't just India, it pops up all over Europe too, incredibly early on.
Remarkably so. Long before Christianity, you find it on countless artifacts from the European Iron Age. It suggests it either originated independently in Europe too, or spread incredibly early.
And not just the Iron Age, you mentioned Neolithic cultures.
Yeah, this is where it gets really widespread. We're talking Old Europe, the Danube Valley civilization, the Vinca culture, maybe 7,000 years ago, Kukudani Tripolian culture, the Varna civilization in the Balkans.
Well, so we're seeing the same basic shape appearing across vast distances and times. Consistently positive, you said.
Overwhelmingly, yes, or at least neutral as a common decorative motif, which makes you wonder, how? Was it diffusion, independent invention? It clearly resonated deeply with many different ancient peoples.
And it continued into classical times, Greece and Rome.
Oh, definitely. It's all over Greco-Roman artifacts. Architectural designs, patterns on clothing, stamped onto coins from as early as the 8th century BCE. Those ancient pins, fibulae, often have swastikas, Athenian pottery, vases.
I think I've seen pictures of that, sometimes on figures.
Yes, decorating the garments of gods and goddesses like Aphrodite. Even as a design element on the Parthenon in Athens, it was just a standard, aesthetically pleasing pattern for them.
And the Romans used it too.
Extensively. In mosaics, beautiful, intricate floor designs, you find it in the catacombs, early Christian burial sites.
Wait, in Christian sites too? That seems counterintuitive now.
It does, but back then, in the Romanesque and Gothic periods, it was sometimes used as a sort of hooked cross, a crux gamata. It could symbolize Christ's victory over death, or even the four Gospels radiating out. There's a famous example in the St. Sophia Church in Kiev, Ukraine.
A hooked version of the Christian cross. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So it had multiple meanings even then, but still generally positive or symbolic of power.
Exactly. And specific groups had their own takes. The Illyrians, ancient people in the Balkans, used it explicitly as a sun symbol. Life, energy, the cycles of nature.
So across Europe, Neolithic, Greco-Roman, early Christian, Illyrian, it's always about life, luck, the sun, cosmic order, maybe divine power. Never the negative stuff we associate with it now.
Never. It was a symbol of well-being, plain and simple.
Okay, let's shift continents again. We've touched on India, Europe. What about other parts of Asia? Because it's huge there too, right? Especially in religions like Buddhism.
Absolutely massive. For potentially billions of people today, it remains a deeply important spiritual symbol. In Buddhism, especially across East Asia, it's everywhere. On temples, scriptures, statues, decorations.
And what does it represent in Buddhism generally?
It symbolizes good fortune, auspiciousness, spiritual power. It's actually considered one of the 32 major marks, or lakshanas, of a fully enlightened Buddha, a sign of his qualities.
So directly linked to the Buddha himself.
Yes. And in some traditions, like Tantric Buddhism, it's used as a focus for meditation, representing the eternal Dharma, the teachings, or the infinite nature of reality. And it's interesting, you see both clockwise and counterclockwise forms. The counterclockwise one, sometimes called swastika or young drung in Tibetan Bon, can have specific meanings too, like stability or the path.
So there's nuance even in its direction.
Definitely. It shows how deeply integrated and thought about it was long before any modern corruption.
And what about Jainism, another major Indian religion?
Equally, if not more, central in Jainism. It's usually clockwise, often with 4 dots inside the arms and a crescent with a dot above it. It represents the 7th Tirthankara, Suparshvanatha, one of their revered spiritual teachers. It's also one of the 8 Ashtamangala, the 8 primary auspicious symbols you must have in Jain temples and scriptures.
Wow, so it's mandatory, essentially.
It's fundamental. They often use it in rituals, like drawing it in rice to start or end ceremonies. And the 4 arms have a very specific meaning. They symbolize the 4 possible states of rebirth in the Jain worldview. Deva, heavenly beings, Naraki, hell beings, Manusha, humans, and Tiryansha, animals, plants, microbes. It's a constant reminder of the cycle of existence, karma, and the path to liberation, a map of the cosmos in a way.
That's incredibly profound. A whole cosmology in one
It
symbol.
really is.
Okay, so from India, it travels with these religions
Yeah.
to China.
Yes, primarily with the spread of Buddhism. In China, it became known as Wan. And during the Tang Dynasty, around 693 AD, the Empress Wu Zetian actually decreed it should be used as an alternative sign for the sun and declared it the source of all good fortune.
So imperial endorsement.
Pretty much. The character Wan itself means 10,000, which in Chinese culture implies infinity, totality. So the symbol got linked to longevity, immortality, endless good fortune, first maybe decorative, then deeply Buddhist. Though there might be older pre-Buddhist links in China too, maybe to sun worship or cosmic symbols.
And from China, it keeps going east,
Yeah.
Japan, Korea.
Exactly. It arrived in Japan with Chinese writing around the 8th century, where it's called manji, again, used in Buddhism but also adopted more broadly. Some samurai clans, like the Hatasuka, even used it as their family crest, their mon.
A family crest. That shows real integration and positive acceptance.
Absolutely. And in Korea, it's manja, or sometimes swastika. Same deal. Buddhist symbol, emblem of good fortune, auspiciousness, the entirety of creation associated with the Buddha's marks of excellence. And importantly, in Korea, it's almost always left-facing and horizontal, not tilted like the later Nazi version, a clear visual distinction.
That's a key point, the visual difference.
Yeah.
So let's just recap this first part before we move to the darker chapter. Indus Valley, Vedic India, Neolithic Europe, Greece, Rome, early Christianity, Buddhism, Jainism, China, Japan, Korea.
Yeah.
Across millennia and vast cultural divides.
The symbol consistently meant good things. Luck, life, sun, infinity, well-being, spiritual power, cosmic cycles, eternity. It was positive, period.
Which makes what happened next just jarring and tragic. The arrival of Hitler and the deliberate systematic appropriation and redefinition of this ancient symbol.
This is where the repulsive stigma is born. And it's crucial, absolutely crucial, to understand that Hitler himself rarely, if ever, used the word swastika. He used the German term Hakenkreuz.
Hakenkreuz, meaning
Literally hooked cross. Haken is hook or hooked, and Kreuz is cross.
hook cross, not swastika.
Right. In his book, Mein Kampf, he uses Hakenkreuz 8 times. Now, today, Google Translate might give you swastika for Hakenkreuz, but that translation itself is influenced by the later association. The original term fits into a pattern of German military and symbolic crosses, like the Balkenkreuz beam cross on tanks or the Ritterkreuz Knight's Cross medal. It sounded, perhaps deceptively, like just another German cross symbol.
But the meaning he poured into it was entirely new and utterly toxic.
Completely. He explicitly laid out the symbolism in Mein Kampf. The red of the Nazi flag, the social idea, the white, the nationalistic idea, and the black Hakenkreuz. He defined it as representing the mission of the struggle for the victory of the Aryan man. He linked it to creative work. But in his ideology, that was inherently, inescapably tied to rabid anti-Semitism and racial purity.
So a direct, intentional twisting, taking this ancient shape and making it stand for hate, violence, and racism.
A deliberate corruption. He aimed to overwrite its millennia of positive meaning with his own vile doctrine.
And he made a specific design choice, too, didn't he? The tilt.
Yes, that 45-degree tilt. That specific orientation became the visual signature of his Hakenkreuz. While swastikas had appeared in various orientations before, this precise, consistent tilt made it instantly recognizable as the Nazi symbol, especially on the national flag adopted in 1935.
And once they adopted it, it was everywhere.
Amen to present, the official party emblem, then the national flag under the Nuremberg laws. You couldn't escape it. Marches, speeches, uniforms, vehicles, documents, buildings. The Reichsadler, the German eagle, was even redesigned, clutching the Hakenkreuz in its talons, the Hoheit symbol.
It was pure visual dominance.
Yeah.
Propaganda and intimidation.
Absolutely. But it went beyond just political branding for them. There was this occult fascination within the Nazi leadership.
Occult? How so?
They genuinely seemed to believe the Hakenkreuz was a symbol of power connected to ancient, secret energies. Some linked it to ideas like vril energy, a mythical cosmic force, and even wilder theories linking it to ancient astronauts, the Shining Ones or Watchers who supposedly visited Earth. They tried to weave it into this dark, pseudo-mystical narrative to grant their movement some kind of ancient, esoteric legitimacy.
That's quite a leap, trying to claim cosmic power through it.
It shows how desperate they were to infuse the symbol with a power that justified their horrific aims.
And this ties into their distortion of the word Aryan too, doesn't it?
Perfectly. Arya, historically and linguistically, refers to Indo-Iranian peoples. In Sanskrit, it means noble, honorable, respectable. It's in Vedic texts, Buddhist texts. The name Iran itself comes from it.
Meaning land of the Aryans or respectable people.
Exactly. The Nazis completely perverted this. They stole the term, stripped it of its actual meaning, and twisted it into the foundation of their false, racist ideology of a master race. It's the same pattern. Hijack something ancient, distort it, weaponize it.
So we arrive at this fundamental clash. 3,000 years of positive meaning, life, luck, spirit. Then a decade or so of Nazi horror imprints a meaning of death, hate, genocide.
And this creates enormous problems today, especially, as you mentioned, for Hindus, Buddhists, Jains, billions for whom it's still sacred. They face prejudice, misunderstanding, real pain caused by this historical collision.
You mentioned an anecdote about that.
Yeah, it really hits home. Someone photocopying images of Hindu deities for their temple standard practice. One image has a swastika, naturally, and strangers in the shop see it and immediately start calling them a Nazi.
Just like that. No understanding of the context.
None. It shows how effectively, how brutally the Nazis managed to overwrite the symbol's meaning in the minds of many, especially in the West, erasing millennia of history with just a few years of terror.
It's incredibly effective propaganda even decades later. And what's ironic, or maybe just sad, is that the symbol was used innocently in the West, not that long before the Nazis made it infamous.
Absolutely. People forget this. The Finnish Air Force used a blue swastika, the Hakkaristi, as their official emblem from 1918 right up until 2020, completely unrelated to Nazism.
2020, wow.
Yeah, and the U.S. Army's 45th Infantry Division had a yellow swastika on a red square on their shoulder patch, a Native American good luck symbol, until the late 1930s when the Nazi association became too strong.
So even the U.S. military used it.
In high school yearbooks, a 1913 yearbook from Westfield High in the U.S. used the gamadium, another name for it, just as a design motif. Russian folk embroidery after 1917 sometimes included it. It was just benign, often positive.
These examples really hammer home how widespread and normal it was before Hitler. Military insignia, school emblems, folk art, completely innocent.
It underscores how total its corruption was, how completely a positive or at least neutral symbol was turned into its opposite, which forces that question.
The central question, can a symbol like this be reclaimed? Is it even possible or desirable to try and separate it from the Nazi atrocities? Should we challenge the idea that it was permanently stolen?
It's a fierce debate. You saw it when some German politicians pushed for an EU-wide ban on the swastika, regardless of context. That sparked huge opposition, especially from Hindu groups saying, this is our sacred symbol, you can't ban our religion.
So it pits preventing hate speech against religious freedom and historical context.
Exactly. For many, the pain is too raw, the association too absolute. It must be suppressed. For others, abandoning it means letting hate win, letting the Nazis permanently define a symbol that meant peace and prosperity to their ancestors for thousands of years. It's a real cultural and moral dilemma.
So for you listening, why does wading into this complex, uncomfortable history matter? Well, understanding the full story, the ancient origins, the widespread positive use, and the deliberate, brutal appropriation gives you a much richer, more nuanced view. Not just of the symbol, but of how history works, how meaning is made and unmade.
And how powerful symbols are, how easily they can be manipulated. It forces us to ask, can we ever truly disentangle the Nazi Hakenkreuz from the ancient swastika? Or is the scar too deep? Can we acknowledge the horror without erasing the history?
It really challenges how we think about collective memory, cultural sensitivity, and confronting difficult truths.
Yeah. Ultimately, this whole deep dive into the swastika, it really exposes the incredible power and the danger of symbols, how they can be redefined, twisted, turned into weapons. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other symbols or ideas or even words have had their original meanings warped or outright stolen over time? Maybe not always as dramatically, but just as significantly.
That's a really potent thought to end on. What responsibility do we have then in how we use and understand these symbols and ideas today? Do we challenge the distorted meanings or do we just accept them, especially now when we're all so connected?
It's something we all probably need to think about more carefully, how history shapes our present and how we choose to carry that history forward.